gee whiz, would you look at me? I'm not even wearing a Godzilla shirt. I'm so unprofessional. It's not like I already have at least 10 Godzilla shirts. Anyway, I actually want to talk about Godzilla, obviously, because I went to MIFF, the Melbourne International Film Festival, and watched 7 in a row. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to make a little kind of like diary journal kind of video. I've got some photos of me there. Look at how happy I am. I'm having a gay old time. I wanted to talk about it because it was a interesting experience. Mostly not because it was just a 8 p.m. till 8 a.m. thing, even though it was actually really 9 p.m. till 9:30 a.m. more realistically, mostly just because it was meant to start at 8:30. They got people in at 8:30, and there was a lot of people, so I had to scan all the tickets, and then they did a presentation, or at least just a thank you thing beforehand. There was a guy dressed up as Godzilla. I have no idea who that was. It must have just been Godzilla. He just showed up, and it was great. I had a lot of fun with that, and they introduced it and all. They emphasized us to not take any photos during the screening, so I won't show anything that I actually did take photos of. I just took some videos of Godzilla on the big screen for myself because it's fucking awesome, and there was some great crowd reactions to some of it, but I'm not going to include any of this in the video because that wasn't why I filmed it. I could just also not say I filmed any of it, but whatever. I had to brag on Snapchat to my friends, and they didn't screenshot anything, so it's all good. But yeah, so I went with a couple of my friends, mainly with Phil and Caitlin, because it was Caitlin's birthday, so it was like, hey, this is great. It just happens to land on her birthday. We all love Godzilla. They'd been watching a bunch earlier this year because I'd lent them the Heisei and Millennium series on DVD as well as Shin Godzilla, so they watched all of those, which included some of the films we watched on the night. And I had obviously, if you've seen my earlier videos from earlier this year, had watched all of the Showa era films, and I had started rewatching the Heisei era, and I had watched. I've seen all these films before as it is. None of it's unbeknownst to me. But we weren't coming in blind to this. There was also John Harrison was there. He stayed for a couple of films before he left, which was fine. It was cool to see him again. Our other friend Simone was there. It was also her birthday. The odds, crazy. But there were some people that we knew there, which was great. We had some fun seats down the bottom instead of up the top because they had couches at the back. I didn't sit on the couch. I sat in the regular chair because I didn't have enough couches. But I was fine with that because I had enough room to put my stuff around because I had, extra jackets and jumpers and food and a blanket and pillow. I didn't use most of it because it didn't actually get that cold, but usually it does. There was enough body heat from the fact that the Astor had been used all day for MIFF screenings, which was great. I'm not really a film festival kind of person. It's just not really my jam, but I don't mind going to one every once in a while. So, yeah, what films did we cover and what was my experiences during them? Oof, man, great question, me. Now let's answer that. So the first up film was, of course, Godzilla, the classic original 1954 film. It was the new 4K restoration. They actually said that it was being shown, it premiered, I think they said it was, I can't remember, it was another film festival somewhere in either the UK or the US a couple months earlier. I think they said Canada, but still, they had already premiered it elsewhere, which is great. It hasn't been shown in Japan yet, which is insane to me that we in Melbourne, Australia, were getting it before the Japanese. So that's really interesting. The print itself was really good. It was one of those, no scratches, no dents, no damages. It looked flawless. Looked wonderful on the big screen. It would be really interesting to see if a UK label was able to get a release of it, because I know Criterion's doing a 4K, but they're, in terms of encoding and stuff, if someone like Arrow Video or someone who's known for having better bit rates, better encoding on their Blu-ray releases, if someone else got, I hope for Second Sight, if they got their hands on a copy of it to do the 4K UHD, it could look immaculate, but it looked really good for that screening. It sounded great, mono audio, there was enough surprise from a lot of the audience who, I think there were people there who hadn't seen it before, probably who hadn't seen most of these films before, which was really fun because obviously some of us were obviously big fans. Once they got to the second film, which was Destroy All Monsters, it was clear that, like, because that movie starts with, we're on Monster Island, here's Godzilla, here's Rodan, here's, like, all of the monsters, and people were going crazy. Like, people were going absolutely hectic for these monsters. Every time a new one came on, everyone's like, fuck yeah, it's that guy, you know? When Godzilla showed up at the start of each, or, like, at some stage of each film, everyone applauded, you know, because it's like, we're all here for this son of a bitch, you know, it's great, he's a cool dude. And that was really fun, so as an audience thing, that was wonderful. Print-wise, because we had, let me just double check, because again, there was 7 films, we had, so yeah, Godzilla 54, Destroy All Monsters. I don't think that was the Criterion print. It looked like a DVD copy realistically, so I wasn't too huge. I mean, it looked fine on the big screen. Again, it would have been better if there was a remaster or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't the Criterion print, because the Criterion one from my Blu-ray has a lot of issues with it, but the DVD from Madman looks better, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Madman version. There was no logos or anything, so I didn't emphasize that. I only know that they had Criterion prints because they had the Janus Films logo before 2 of them, which I think was Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Return of Godzilla, which were the next 2. So those were at least, restorations to some degree. It was interesting for Return of Godzilla because I haven't seen the Criterion version of that yet. I know it's on the Criterion channel, but I'm not currently in subscription for that. So I haven't seen that yet. So that was interesting. But they also had Godzilla vs. Mothra, which it didn't have any logos before that. So I guess that wasn't a Criterion thing. I don't know. Either way, then there was Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, and Shin Godzilla. So, yeah, I think I mentioned all the names. Yeah, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Return of Godzilla. Did I struggle with any of these? Did I fall asleep? Did I cow it out and leave? No, I stayed the whole entire time with Phil and Caitlin, and that was great. It was Return of Godzilla that I fell asleep during, but that was mostly on purpose because, like I said, I've been watching most of these this year anyway, and I knew that, like, look, I was going to get tired enough during this screening to begin with that I needed to make a decision. It was basically, do I fall asleep during Mechagodzilla or Return, or both? And I was actually really widely awake during the first 3 films. By the end of Mechagodzilla, I was a bit, again, a bit tired, but at the same time, I was like, I was fine, but once Return started, I'm like, yeah, I saw this like a month and a half ago. I remember all of this that's happening. And, like, obviously, you're not just there to be like, I remember all this, I don't need to watch it. You're there for the grand scale of it, to see it all on the big screen. And that's great, because even watching the original Godzilla, which I've seen 3 times now since December, once for my Godzilla video, once because I was on the Criterion 24/7 and my friends were watching it, I jumped on, why not? And now once on the big screen. So I've seen it 3 different times over the course of the past 9 months. And yet I never got bored during that, because it's such a dramatic film, in such an interesting way, because it's like the only film to really showcase the horrors of what Godzilla left behind. It's not just, oh, this building is destroyed, oh, look, he's fighting other monsters. It's, oh, look at all these people who are dying because of him, all these children who have radiation poisoning because of him. No other film really does that. Outside of, like, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, there is not really many Godzilla films that really emphasize the human toll of it all, which is interesting, It kind of becomes a cliche that most of them are just people running away from Godzilla and end up getting trampled. But that one's really heavy on that message, and that was really nice to see. But it was Return of Godzilla that I fell asleep during. I remember parts of it. I remember the first 20 or so minutes. I remember the part where Godzilla's in the, like, where he first raids and he's destroying the power plant, the nuclear power plant, and the part where he what does he do? He's in the city, he's been knocked partially unconscious, and you've got the people who are trying to escape the building. But again, because I'd seen this all before twice, and also most recently 2 months ago, I was like, I'll fall asleep, it's fine. And I was pretty tired. But then I woke up, was happily able to continue watching Godzilla vs. Mothra, the 1992 film, and GMK and Shin Godzilla, which were the 2 I was really excited for because I really want to rewatch Shin Godzilla on the big screen. I had seen it in cinema when it came out, but I really want to see it on the big screen again because it's such a spectacle. But so is GMK. That was like a lot more dark than I was expecting, because I haven't seen that film for probably 7 or 8 years. That was the Heisei and Millennium series ones were the ones I watched as a teenager, because I rewatched most of the Heisei films like last year, and like from Return all the way up to, it must have been last year. I think I was just rewatching them this year just because I could. I was just in the mood for it, but then I was just really in the mood for Biollante, so I ended up doing Return and Biollante as a double. But I watched most of the Heisei ones last year, and that was like a great watch, whatever. But I haven't rewatched the Millennium series since pre 2018, pre Letterboxd days for me. So I haven't logged any of them until now. And that was, or at least I'm pretty sure I might have done Godzilla 2000, but I didn't have the American version. I haven't logged the American version yet, which I need to do. Sorry, I haven't logged the Japanese version, so I need to watch that, because I had the DVD and I'm like, I need to buy the Blu-ray, so I bought the Blu-ray and I haven't watched it, because I'm an idiot, or just lazy. One of the two, either way. So yeah, watching that one in the cinema was really, really interesting, because it's really dark, and it's kind of got the similar effect to the first film, where it showcases just how messed up Godzilla can be, but it also kind of nicely reflects, or was reflected by -1, where not just having basically the same ending, it has a lot of similar story beats, and like the feel of Godzilla is very much the same. And I really liked that. I liked this version of Godzilla. It was really fun watching each version of Godzilla in their different costumes, seeing the reaction from people, especially again when Godzilla was on screen, everyone's cheering, or at least when he arrives, because most of the time he's there to destroy cities and whatever. There were different elements. There was from what I remember from Return of Godzilla, there was the boardroom thing with the Japanese, I don't know, Prime Minister or whoever, with the guy from Russia and the military guy from America, and they're basically saying, we need to nuke Japan to kill this Godzilla thing, and he's just like, I don't want to do that. And they're like, we got to do it. We're American and Russian. We're better than you. So that was amusing to watch with an audience, because it was very funny. Because egos are hilarious. Anyway, the same went for like Shin Godzilla, when you realize just how ridiculous the bureaucracy of it was. And I love that. I love that movie so much. So watching that with a crowd, see them all laugh is really fun, because I think it's a very funny movie, but also exceedingly horrifying, which is the best kind, where you can get one that can be so funny and so stupid and satirical and goofy, or even just Manila's there and we're having fun with Manila, and then also all these people are dying, and it's the most visceral thing you've ever seen. But that was what made like Destroying Monsters really fun, because again you get all these monsters and it's really kiddish and everyone's having fun, and eventually Manila shows up, and that's when you really see how the crowd reacts, because like everyone went crazy for Rodan, which was beautiful. But seeing Manila, I love Manila, he's stupid as hell, but everyone was going crazy for Manila, especially during the final fight, when they're all just taking down Ghidorah, and Manila just uses his little atomic breath and then jumps on him at the end. Everyone went crazy. The giant spider shows up. So many creatures show up and just don't even do anything. You see a guy flying in the background, you never see him fight. You just see him at Monster Island at the end, and a lot of people were just like, who the fuck is that guy? He was there for 2 seconds, he was probably cut out, I don't know, who cares? So there's a lot of cartoonishness that people get a laugh at because of how, cartoonish the films are, even if they're trying to be serious. There are elements to them where there's a goofy amount of stuff. There's, certain dialogue choices, especially with, I think it was the Mechagodzilla one, where they have space titanium, and the guy says, space titanium from space? And the guy says, yes, from space. And everyone's just like, my god, this dialogue, oofed. So again, those ones where you see them, me by myself watching them, it's like, man, these are repetitive and dull and cheesy, but there's some fun to it. But then you see it with a crowd and you get much more of a reaction from it, because, the goofy stuff, or the stuff that's really, really stupid, becomes really fun to watch because everyone else is reacting with it. And yeah, so again, with Godzilla vs. Mothra, that one was more for, that GMK and Shin Godzilla, outside of the occasional funny moments, most of it was seeing the spectacle. Seeing that stuff on the big screen was beautiful. And again, I would have liked, if I hadn't seen Return of Godzilla 2 months ago, I probably would have liked to have seen certain elements of that on the big screen that I fell asleep through, but at the same time, once I saw him show up to the, radiation plant, I was just like, you know what? I'm good. This stuff it just doesn't appeal to me as much. It doesn't look as good. I'm gonna go to sleep. So I just dozed off. It's fine. Obviously, you could make the question, oh, you didn't stick through the whole thing. You fell asleep during the movies. Yeah, a lot of people did. We had a guy behind us who just was asleep during most of the films. I don't even know why he was there by the time we got to Shin Godzilla, because he was sleeping. And I'm like, what, are you expecting to pick up at like 8 o'clock or something? Like, go home. It's maybe the trams just went wrong. It's like, I'll just sleep. I'll wait till tomorrow. I'll wake up. I've already paid my $50 to get in. So, yeah, but there was still a good, healthy crowd by the end of it. I didn't see anyone up the top level because there was a lot of people there to begin with. I don't know how many people when it was over, because Caitlin, myself, and Phil just got out of there. Once the credits started for Shin Godzilla, we were like, yep, we're done, we're out. A nice thing that they did have between each film was an introduction. They had a guy who works at Toho who was even in Shin Godzilla. He actually mentions it, that he was in one of the scenes running away from Godzilla. He said that you won't notice me, but I was there and I enjoyed running away from Godzilla. So that was cool, because he introduced each film in his native Japanese, and it gave some context. It was like, you go from Godzilla to Destroy Monsters, and he's like, it's a different tonal shift, because this was also one film per decade for 70 years, hence why it was 7 films. And you had that contextual thing of, he's like, oh, a lot of time had passed between the original Godzilla to here, it became a bit more cartoonish. Like, he was giving enough context for, like, audiences who weren't aware, because the whiplash from going from Godzilla to Destroy Monsters is so crazy. And then you go to Mechagodzilla, which is very much the same kind of level, but then you go to Return of Godzilla, where it's the Heisei era. It's been a couple more years. There's been a lot of time between them. And yeah, the most interesting factor I think he mentioned was, outside of GMK, it had been a heavy inspiration for -1, and of course Shin Godzilla being, the Hideo Anno's work, the guy who did Evangelion and whatever, and how they changed the style of Godzilla, having it be a morphing creature rather than just being one singular body. There was all these different things that he mentioned, but what I really found interesting was his reference to Godzilla vs. Mothra, for it being the most popular and well-received of the Heisei era. It got like the most box office, whatever. And the fact that when they were making the film, the decision was, hey, look, these past few films have been very male-heavy, male-focused audience. We want that female audience. Who do the females like? Mothra. So let's put Mothra in the film. But just to make sure it's not too female-heavy, they also put in Batra, which was... I love it. It's great. It's hilarious. It's also very heavy on its, like, themes of global warming and protecting the planet and stuff like that. So there are elements like that it's just really entertaining to watch. But it was just that factor of him saying, it's like, it was intended more strongly for to bring in a female audience. It became the most popular film in terms of like getting the most amount of money, whatever. So the most financially successful. And yeah, it's interesting because it is a pretty fun film. Outside of the weird Indiana Jones ripoff stuff at the start, the rest of the film is really quite good, and I love them. So I think it is probably my favorite of the Heisei films, and it's one of my favorite films because it's basically adapting my favorite of the kaiju Godzilla films, which is the original Mothra, and just adding Godzilla to it, but also adding Batra, and it's just, I love it. It's so fun, and visually it's so unique. It's just really fun to have watched these on the big screen with friends and just with an audience. And yeah, I had absolutely no issues with the screening whatsoever. I think the Astor did a great job. I think MIFF did a great job. It was really well put together and a really interesting selection of films. I would have preferred maybe Godzilla vs. Hedorah instead of Mechagodzilla, but maybe going. I mean, I don't know. It's if you want to go for tonal balance, it's like you go for the dark one for Godzilla, then the fun light one with the strong monsters, and dark again with Hedorah, then Godzilla, Return of Godzilla isn't exactly a bundle of joy movie, but there is some fun to have with it for, again, its political satire and whatever, because it's basically a proto-version of Shin Godzilla before Shin Godzilla shat all over it. Or at least that's how I interpret the film. But yeah, so it's like, I think of all the films that they chose, they went with the right ones. Final Wars could have been fun to have watched instead of GMK, but GMK on the big screen was so amazing, I don't think it mattered. And then if you had like Destroy Monsters and if you had Destroy Monsters and Final Wars, I feel like it would have lessened the impact to some degree, because they're the same style of film of, let's put in all the monsters and they fight and there's aliens and whatever. Yeah, a lot of these films are the same, but still, it is what it is. So again, having Return and Shin was, for me, the dichotomy that I didn't need, but it does, at least for a new audience, bring a different perspective. Hey, we're reigniting this franchise, this is what it is. And yeah, so I mean, even GMK is just a direct sequel to the original Godzilla anyway, so it's the same as Return of Godzilla to some degree. No, that's all the thoughts I had on it. I had a great time. It was fun. I got home safe, obviously. I was surprisingly really well awake by the time I'd woken up after Return of Godzilla. So for the rest of the next 3 films, bliss, easy peasy. So yeah, I would, look, realistically, highly recommend all of these films. They're great. They're wonderful to watch. The levels of camp was well appreciated among the audience. The hooting and hollering for those certain monsters when they appeared was great. Like, it was just a wonderful time to experience with an audience. So, and on a big screen, because the Astor Theatre in Melbourne is a super screen. It's a big screen. Not as big as IMAX, obviously, but yeah, it's a great cinema. So, it was good. It was a good time. Had a great time. Godzilla good. Goodbye. Adios.